Like she said, I've been doing this for a few years now, so I feel like I've got a good idea of where you guys should be at in this process and the important types of questions you should be answering at this stage. So let's start the PowerPoint with the most important question of today. What should you be doing right now? So just as a preface for this session, we're doing a lot of questions. So if you don't have a notepad or pen or calculator, this is probably the time to get it. And while those people are doing that, we should start thinking about what should we be doing at this t stage of our preparations. So just out of curiosity, when are any of you guys sitting the UCAT? If you don't want to share that, that's fine. So I'll start off. So I sat mine on the 16th of August, I think. So at this time, I would have had exactly 2 weeks left. So the advice I put 27th, cool. So the advice is kind of all depending on which stage you guys would be at. So if you have 2 versus 3 weeks, there's a very big difference. It's 27th August, 2nd September. Okay, so a bit later than I had it, but it's probably for the best now, seeing as when I had it, I also had the BMAT, but now you guys have more time, so that's good. It's probably good to have those later dates. So you got around 2, 3 weeks, so that's good. So I would say around 3 weeks out, we should be maybe not doing as many mocks as you would think. Now is probably the best time to kind of just be doing loads and loads of timed questions. So by now you should hopefully have done so many untimed questions. You know all the techniques from all your past sessions that you're getting to the stage where you're comfortable to be able to do as many mocks as possible. So by this stage, you should really be focusing, I would say, on your weakest sections. So you have so much data from all the questions you would have been doing by now. So my main advice at this point will be focusing on your weakest section because in the last 2 weeks or so, so maybe from next week onwards, you want to just starting to focus just on mocks. So for now, it's still the time to kind of focus on your weaknesses, focus on your weakest kind of question types and weakest section. Because when you go on to maybe the later stage, you want to be making sure you kind of excel in the sections you're good at. So you might not have enough time for your weaker sections. That's probably my first piece of advice. So now let's go on to the actual questions. So here we have going to start with some VR questions today. So my piece of advice for VR would be to make sure you're triaging. I'm sure you've heard this so many times, but it's still really important to understand. We want to triage based on passage size and complexity. So if you see a passage that is very long, but it seems like on a very simple concept, that's probably better than picking a short passage, which is based on like quantum physics or something like that. And you want to be trying answering all the shorter questions for shorter passages first, and the ones seemingly on less complex, like I said, complex topics, like I said. You want to triage also based on question type, not just passage size. So true, false, and not mentioned are likely to take less time because hopefully by now you've understood what scanning means and practice your speed reading. So you want to be able to hopefully have that skill that you can scan for those keywords and those questions and make these question types a lot easier. So you guys have 11 passages, so make sure you try to answer at least 8 of them really well during the time period. And you should kind of be making your practice more realistic now towards the actual exam. Because realistically, you're not going to be able to do all 11 passages. Maybe you can, but for most people, probably not. So you want to be making sure in your actual practice you're taking that into account if you are doing mocks as well. And like, even now, you still have lots of time, so still make sure you're practicing your speed reading techniques. And yeah. So common pitfalls as well is the use of, we'll see this a lot in the questions that I've picked, is the use of extreme words. These are always very likely, such as always, never, must. This usually means the prompt is incorrect, and it will only be true if very explicitly stated. So if you see always, never, must, unless it very directly says that in the passage, it's very likely going to be an incorrect prompt in the question. So don't use your outside knowledge. So for example, if a passage states that a drink contains caffeine and a true false not mentioned question asks if this said drink improves alertness, even though you know that caffeine will improve alertness, unless it's directly made that correlation in the passage, it should be not mentioned. And then finally is the use of synonyms which sound similar but actually have different meanings. For example, there may be a question saying, um, this method of waste disposal eliminates any reduced efficiency, whereas in the passage it will say reduce. So you have to be able to see that subtle, well, maybe not subtle, but that difference between synonyms here. So hopefully that makes sense. So I think it's around 20 seconds to do every single question. So, or each question. So I'm going to give you guys around 2 minutes, 3 minutes to have a go at these questions here and write down your answer. If you want to put them in the chat, you can, or keep them to yourself, whichever you want to do. So I'm starting your 2.5 minutes now. Okay, so it's been around 2 minutes now. So I see some of you put an answer in around 1 minute. I think I accidentally gave away the answer for the first one, but pretend like that didn't happen. So the first question is sunlight never reaches the bottom of the Cabeus crater. So let's see. I can't really tell if you guys found this one easy or hard, but we'll just see. You need to be thinking about the context of different types of words. So let's say the keyword in this question is sunlight. You want to be seeing anything that relates to light and maybe it's antonyms as well. So whenever see a word, think about what is similar to it and what word could also be opposite. Because by you can see that one thing is false by seeing that the opposite is true. So it's saying sunlight never reaches the bottom of the Cabeus crater. Um, we now see and most scientists believe the likeliest places for water at the bottom and the moon's pole, where craters like Cabeus are in permanent shadow. So therefore, we're seeing that if it's in permanent shadow, it's therefore true. Sunlight will never reach the bottom. That was the first question. The second one is can't tell. So this is similar to before. Further analysis of water from the L-Cross experiment will show where water on the moon has come from. So this all if we'd probably be scanning here for L-Cross, we'd be looking here. Maybe not in this first one, we'd be looking down here. Multiple lines of evidence show water is present in both the high angle vapor plume and the material thrown up by the L-Cross central impact. So maybe we think because it's a high angle vapor plume that it's a gas, but we don't know that the water itself was a gas. We just know that there was a plume that was thrown up. It's not directly said that is this water that was thrown up, and it's just it maybe the impacts caused like the solid ice perhaps to be thrown up. Maybe you know from your own knowledge what this should be. So this is not the case where we want to go straight for not mentioned. It's not directly said. The next question, there is water in the Cabeus crater because at the north pole of the moon. This is false. So false is usually going to be it's most likely going to be can't tell most of the time if it's a very direct thing. And the only time it wouldn't be is if it's very direct like this. So if we're seeing North Pole when we're scanning for North Pole, like I said, the opposite of South Pole. So we can see here we'll be scanning, or let me see on the first paragraph, South Pole. Sorry, it would therefore means it's not true. And then the last question, there is no water in liquid form on the moon because it's cold. And therefore, once again, this is too specific. So well, before it was can't tell, it's also can't tell again here because you have no information about the form that it was on. Because even though it says down here, it's safe to say Cabus holds water. Um, we don't know this for sure, and also because it's too cold. So usually, if it gives something that's very specific and then a reason for it, unless that's also directly mentioned, it's going to be can't tell. So hopefully, that point I was trying to put across earlier about very specific, direct statements, especially if that's very direct lines of reasoning behind it being usually too specific it's been made clear now. On to the next question. So I'll give you guys around 1 minute 30. This is the first two of four. So what was the third answer again? So the third answer was false because it says North Pole here and it says South Pole up here. So if you guys have any questions on any of these, just let me know. I'll try to go through them. Would you say that the can't tell option is only used when there's not enough information? For example, on question two, it said that further analysis from the L-cross would show Konkin distribution. Since with a question two, okay. So let me read that bit again. So this is the further analysis from L-cross would show concentration distribution. Since it doesn't outright deny this cannot show the water from two this one here is can't tell because in theory it could, but it also is the very other keyword that I probably should specify a bit more is that says will show. So will is very certain. So as it's certain that it's from this experiment. So this is a very certain phrase. So look at the verb will and analysis from this specific L-cross experiment. So it's very specific. And there's also not enough information relating to it here. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys around a minute and a half to do this one. That means I'll give you 30 seconds for the next two. So I'll let you guys. Oops. Okay, maybe not. I'll give you guys around a minute and so to do this one. So have a go and let me know your answers in the chat, or at least when you're done, so I know how many you guys are taking. So I was around a minute and 45 seconds for you guys to answer these questions. So this one's about bees here, and also someone from my uni. So let's look at this first question. So, according to the passage, urban environments can benefit bees. So, we can see that it's not completely specific. If it said will here, that'd be a different question, following on from the last one. Can benefit bees because there are fewer predators in the cities than in rural areas. So, we don't really see anything about predators. If we see things about competition, over here, we don't see anything about predators. City gardens provide varied plants that flower at different times. So, we'd be quickly starting for city gardens. Yeah, so over here, urban gardens offer diverse flowering plants throughout the year, whereas rural monocultures may bloom only for a few weeks. And therefore, this is going to be beneficial to the bees because they can therefore pollinate more and all of what bees do. And then the next one, urban beekeepers are more experienced than rural ones. So once again, that's some common sense and not very supported by the passage. So you wouldn't really say that one. And well, the last one, local councils provide funding for beekeeping initiatives. So local councils have begun incorporating pollinator-friendly policies into urban planning, though funding remains inconsistent. So this one's actually contradicted to this one. The answer is B. And then next question, which of the following statements is best supported by information in the passage? So for this one, wild pollinators are more important for honeybees than for biodiversity. So although it does say over here, they could outcompete wild pollinators. There's no reference towards which is most important towards biodiversity. So once again, is R is very certain and biodiversity is a very certain line of reasoning that they are more important because of biodiversity. Not really mentioned biodiversity or anything similar to it related to wild pollinators, so we should know it's not that one. Then the increase in urban beekeeping began before 2010. So we can see membership has tripled since 2008 with the sharpest increases in metropolitan areas. So therefore, metropolitan, no similar word to urban. So we'd be looking for that one. We'd also be scanning for years because obviously we need some years to support. I'd be looking here, 2012, not really relevant. Over here, we're seeing membership triple since 2008. So yeah, this seems pretty strong. Then we look here, rural beekeeping has declined as urban beekeeping has grown. We don't really see anything about rural beekeeping anywhere, so that one's not very strongly supported. And then honeybees are now the dominant pollinator species in London. This is too specific. So even though we know that they're outcompeting wild pollinators such as bumblebees and solitary bees, we don't know if there are other pollinators that in theory could be more population than the honeybee. It's not specifically said that. So hopefully that these two questions make sense. And now on to the next two. I'm going to give you guys around 30 seconds to have a look at these two. So time begins now. Have a go. All right, so there's your time for these questions here. So Dr. Weber's concerns about urban beekeeping primarily relate to the quality of honey produced in cities. So at this point in the question, we're not trying to be spending that much time, so you can just think quality, not really mentioned, the potential negative impact on other pollinating insects. So this is the only one that's actually mentioned in this whole text. So argue that too many honeybees in urban areas. So first we want to be scanning to the paragraph about Dr. Marcus Weber. Thank you for your answer. Um, so this is already the only thing he's saying. So it's very clear this is what he's actually saying. It doesn't mention training. It doesn't mention diseases. It's very clear that's answer B. And for D, each of the following statements can be supported by information in the passage except um D. So well done to who put the answer. So A, pesticides pose a threat to health. So you can see this here, reducing major threat to bee health. When talking about pesticides, that's the first one we'll be scanning for. So this is kind of a longer type of question you can see. So this kind of question type talking about each of the statements can be supported. So therefore, you know that in theory, you'd have to be looking in the text for three different reasons why. So just outside of doing analysis, you probably want to be thinking about guessing this kind of question just because of the amount of time. So the last one is a very clear example of you just scan for Dr. Webb's and you be very straightforward to find the answer. But this one here, there's three different types of things you, in a theory, have to be looking for. So this one, pesticides pose a threat. We just talked about that one. Sarah Chen's work now includes environmental education. We can see this education is the solution. Urban beekeeping was uncommon before 2012. We see that's tripled since 2008. So therefore, it's a bit common before. And then the correct answer, the British Beekeeper Association was founded in 2008. So this is kind of right to my similar point of before of similar words that have very different meanings. So it's just because the membership has tripled since 2008 doesn't mean it was necessarily zero before. So it's very clear that it's not mentioned it being founded. So it's obviously the incorrect answer. So the answer is B and D for these two. So if you guys have any questions about this one, let me know. But otherwise, on to the next one. So I'll give you guys around 2 minutes of this, conscious of time. So just have a go. So that's around 2 minutes and 15 seconds you've had now. So let's start looking at the answers for these questions. So the first one, which is of the following is a cultural function of the botanic gardens? When you think about cultural, thinking like providing value to society. So let's look at the how each one is not correct. So for A, we have providing seeds for preservation in, okay, so D, B, C. Okay, we'll see. Correct. So you got the first one correct, so all done. So cultural function. So we want to be thinking about providing the society of all of these. So providing seeds for preservation as seed bank. So it does say to maintain documented collection that is the main role of living plants for scientific research. We don't know specifically the form of this. It could be in theory, when they're like they might keep on growing them. You don't know specific it's a seed bank, even though that's what common sense would say. Presenting living plants in an artistic way. So we know it's on display, we don't know it's an artistic way. Presenting groupings of plants from different countries. So we just see the plants from around the world. We don't know if they're grouped by where they're actually from, so therefore C is incorrect. So therefore, based on this bit, most botanic gardens provide visitors about information about 21st century environmental issues. So this is the one about them providing stuff to visitors, so that obviously affecting culture, should therefore make this one correct. So just from the keywords, you probably see helping the public. That's really the most related to culture, isn't it? So hopefully that wouldn't make sense. Next one, so collections of living plants and botanic gardens are mainly of great value, mainly because, let's see here, so they provide us with food, that's not mentioned at all. They form a reference for the identification of plants here. And here, we'd probably be thinking about what is the great value mainly. So you're thinking about what's the main purpose of them. So if you remember from the paragraph, we said their main role is to maintain documented collections of living plants. So just based off that and our scanning for the word main and great value, anything related to that, we'd be thinking about documented collection of living plants for scientific research, therefore form a reference to identification of plants. So yeah, carbon footprint's not mentioned, and they display interesting plants for the public to view. So while this is one of the purposes, the main role is for, to document them and identify. So it's over here, but the main one is what it says over here. So hopefully that makes sense. Then now next one, physics gardens were first established between what's the 16th century. So we're going to be scanning for a time frame. So you see all of these ones here, but we can see the first of these being founded during the Italian Renaissance of the 16th century. So 16th century, that's going to be 1500, 1501 to 1600. So this one is just knowing what century means. So it's not 1600 to 1700. It's like kind of the one before. So hopefully that makes sense. And then according to the passage, the Royal Botanic Gardens queue are quite important because of, so it says over here, we want to be looking at growth of universities. Universities not already mentioned. Need for medicinal plants also not mentioned. Commercial value of plants. So first we've been scanning for Royal Botanic Gardens queue, and then well, this is it's only mentioned here, but they were established in the tropics and economic botany became a focus. So that's economic botany. That's going to be talking about commercial value. So well done to the person with the answers. You got most of them right, so well done. So now moving on to decision making. So the main tips that I'd have for this one is to make sure you're always using your whiteboard. Diagrams will make the most hard, most complex question seemingly become a lot more simple. So always try to display every single thought, every single bit of information visually, if you can. So it's not just QI you need probability for, you also need it for this. It's not going to be past GCSE, so your Andrew or oral, no bad Venn diagrams. We'll also round your numbers to make everything a little bit more simple for you. So something else that I've not written down would be to try and use as much mental maths as possible and try and simplify things as much as you can, but taking care to do so because that will affect your answer. Choose the strongest argument. So the strongest argument will want the least number of assumptions. We'll see what that means when we get to those questions. And like I've been saying before, always focus on, while you still have time, focus on your weakest question type because that will is or a chain is only as strong as its weakest link or whatever the saying is. So you want to be making sure that you don't really have one that's always you're always gonna fail because you never know because the way that UCAT is put together is random, isn't it? Or it's like one of the random picks. You could get very unlucky with the different types of questions you get. So I would say make sure right now you're focusing on your weakest question type. So the first question I'm gonna give you guys around a minute and a half for this is this syllogism, whatever they're called, all rice is edible unless it has been boiled. Salt is necessary to make rice edible. Place yes if the conclusion follows. Place no if it does not follow. So I'll give you guys around a minute and a half to have a go. Okay, so thank you to everyone that's put an answer. So most of you on the same thing. We'll see who's correct now. So you've got yes, no, no. So let's go through each one. So one of the helpful diagrams is even for these ones, it's important to do diagrams, is to make a like a different like Venn diagram. It doesn't really look like a Venn diagram in this one. There's not much overlap. Well, there's not any overlap really, but it just helps you display it visually. So all rice is inedible unless it's been boiled. So we have a circle for rice. We have one for inedible and edible. That's going to be opposite. Salted necessary to make rice edible. So we know it's only going to be edible if it's been salted plus boiled. We don't know. It's not really related to anything to inedible. So therefore we have all these circles. So if rice is edible, so we'll be looking here, it must have been boiled. That's true. If rice has been boiled, it must be edible. So we're now looking at the edible circle. It has to be salted and boiled because it's saying all rice are inedible unless it's been boiled. So it has to be boiled and salted. But uh, if we're saying if rice is edible, it must have been boiled. So if we're going this way in, then it makes sense. But if we're going this way out, it doesn't really make sense because it has to be both salted and boiled. So hopefully, why does it make sense? If it doesn't, I can try to clarify. Anyways, edible rice must have been boiled and salted. So we're saying, yeah, edible rice must have been boiled and salted based off what we know. If rice has been salted, it must be edible. So that's not true because it's kind of the same one as this one here, isn't it? And then if rice has been boiled, it must have been salted. So once again, on their own, they don't really have any relation, as we'll see from some other questions. That's quite a straightforward one. That's why I put it first. So hopefully you can see the type of question you want to be triaging for. This is a bit more of a tricky one. I always think it's very annoying. So I'll give you guys around a minute. I'll have to go at this one. Try and keep in mind to draw as many diagrams, whether you do a Venn diagram, if you do arrow diagrams, just try to go with that for this question. All right, so giving you guys a bit longer for these questions, it's a bit confusing. So it's always best, I would say, to just cross out or just simplify it to letters because it's just saying mooms, pluders, nisms, or whatever, just very confusing in the first place. I just first of all cross these out to letters. So let's have a look. So first we'd be drawing out these different ones. So these are the two ways I would go about showing it diagrammatically. So last time we showed a Venn diagram. Here we have also the arrow flow charts as well, based off of this. We just simplify the words in this. So M, P, N, and K. That's what we simplified to. So all M of P. So by doing that, we can also draw this diagram. So all M are going to be inside of P. No P is at N, so therefore we can draw a separate circle of N. Both P and N are K. So therefore we get this diagram, very helpful diagram that just made this question very, very easy. See, so most people put yes for this one. Most people put yes for the second one too. So if it's a fish, it's a moon, it's Kogan, so yeah. If it's an M, it's a P, which is also a K. So yep. No N is M. We know N as N and P. So no P is N, right? So these two are separate. Since M is a subset of P, we therefore know no M's can be, yeah, no M can be an N. So the first no, if an animal is a polluter, it is not a moom. So this is not true as we know that all M's are P's and therefore there's some intersection of which are both because all M's are going to be P's. And because there is a possibility because it's very certain. If I said it will be, it will like, the other way around, then you have to make sure we don't infer the opposite of all P's being M's, even though all M's are P's. And then no K's are M's. So we see K as the greatest subset. So therefore, some K's will be. If a fish is a P but not a M, so if a fish is a P but not M is a K. Well, see, that's also true because they're all okay. So hopefully that makes sense. Any question? This is usually one that people find most difficult, if I'm being honest. So the really simple way to go about this is just try to draw this diagram and then base it off that. So this one's kind of the bottom one kind of throwing people off because even if it is like a even if it is a meme, I think it would still count as a K. So hopefully that makes sense. That one just a bunch of different as just practice. Is practice that specific question type. Practice being able to draw those diagrams efficiently and correctly. Because I'm sure in most online sites they'll have that diagram. Some don't, but most of them will. So just try practice drawing those and those places where you're unable to draw the Venn diagram. What method would you recommend? And then I would try to do these arrow charts, just simplifying each letter into a direction and thinking. So and then hopefully that would help you to draw them. But I would just try to simplify what they've said. Because if you just keep looking up here, it's just going to confuse you. So just try to draw the arrows and then say if there's M, it's okay, then think about how it's related. So hopefully that makes sense. So try to draw the arrow charts. Just simplify what you've been given diagrammatically and work with that. So even for this one, if it was a P, it's not a moon. So you can see that we've got this arrow here, which will show that it's not true. For this one, 1 and 3 are showing that if it's a M, it's a K. So all M to P, then P to K. So these arrow charts can also show you too. So then we'll have a go at this one now. This is also very diagrammatically based. So I'm gonna give you guys on a minute and a half for this one. So have a go. Okay, well done to everyone that put an answer. Some of you guys were very rapid, which is very reassuring. Anyway, so four people, HIJK, are a doctor, manager, teacher, and lecturer, not necessarily in the order. So for this one, the method is kind of draw out each letter and then try to put each one, kind of fill in the gaps for each table almost. And by having that visually represented, it will help you able to fill in the blanks more straightforward. So H is a doctor, J owns a sport, and we know that they each own a different type of vehicle. So the answer is C. I forgot to tick it, but yeah, the answer is C. So we know so the stuff in green is the stuff that we've been given in the question. So H is a doctor, J owns a sports car, K owns an electric car. Person who owns a motorbike is not the teacher. And we know that the therefore the person that owns the scooter is the manager. We know that from the manager, we know from two of this one here. and we know the person owns the motorbike is not the teacher. We know the doctor must own the motorbike as yeah. Therefore, we know that I is the only one with two slots left, right? So it has to be I. So that is a manager, and it also has a scooter. So the answer is C. So you guys seem to have mostly got that. So we'll continue on. So how we got this one? There can also be a lot more maths based, like for the next few. This is why it's important to have a go. So and brush up on your maths. So have a go at this one. This one's quite straightforward, but it's just about working out what each one is. So I would just say just try skim through all the numerical words because everything else is pretty irrelevant. Okay, so for the lengthier logic puzzle, there's ordering price as well as other categories. How do you recommend tackling those? I mean, this is not going to sound very helpful, but to be honest, I would just skip them. If anything that's lengthy, unless you have time to skip it, because like you've seen, these are from like actual paper, like from the UCAT website. Other ones too, like the mo most, and from my experience too, a lot of them are not going to be that length. So just literally just skip them. You need to get into that mindset of skipping anything that's going to take too much time. But if you want to actually try do them, for lengthy logical orders, order and price orders, other categories. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really understand which one you're referencing by them. That's because I don't I don't have an example in front of me. But I would just say try based off the question what you actually need to do. And then most of them will be similar. So it's probably just practicing them a lot. Because the process will always be the same based off the command words. So I would just usually either practice them if you really want to answer them or just skip them. But a skill of the UCAT is definitely knowing which ones to skip. This has been around 2 minutes now. I'm guessing I've distracted a few of you, but we'll just carry on in the interest of time. So once again, we're always going to forget about the names or any fluff of the question. Going to break it down to what actually matters. So we're going to put the letters C, N, A, and S. So we know they raised 3,450 on the sponsor swim. Each one swims 5 lengths for each year of their age, receiving £10. So therefore, to know the amount of total years, to do five for 5 lengths and 10, sorry, and yeah, 10 for each, because that's how much they receive for each length. So we know we do 3,450 divided by 50 and we get 69. So that's the amount of total years between all four of them. We know Chris is 18 or C is 18, and we know that A plus N plus S is going to be 69, so the total minus that age, which is 51. And then we know that from this, so Norman receives 100 less than Alex, but 100 more than Steven. So a lot of people will probably get this mixed up. So if Norman has received £100 less, that means it should be N plus 2 is A. So now want to set the relationships to each other. And then we then do N minus 2 is equal to S, because therefore if if he's received 100 more than Stephen, that means Stephen's going to be 2 years younger. So then now we've got them all in similar terms because we know 100 divided by 50 will be 2 years. Then we can then put them all into one equation. So n plus 2 plus n plus obviously n Norman himself plus n minus 2, so the plus 2's will cancel out. Therefore got 3n equals 51, n equals 17. So this bit will probably be most straightforward. It's just recognizing that Stephen is going to be 17 minus 2 is equal to 15. Because I'm sure some people probably put 19 instead. That's probably the most common one people put. So it's just about thinking logically which way around it should be. So if they're receiving £100 less, that means they're going to be younger. just when we're putting it all in the same time. So hopefully that one makes sense. The answer for this one was 15. Because now we're getting onto the argument question. So let's see, I'll kind of give away, but hopefully you guys didn't see that. I'm gonna give you guys like 2 minutes to have a go at these. Um, 'Cause we don't have too much, don't want to spend too much time on DM. So just have a go. The trick for this is thinking about assumptions, and maybe you saw from when I see one ahead, but the keywords in the question and which answer actually directs those keywords. So it may not be something that you might necessarily agree with, but you need to know which one makes logically the most sense. Okay, so that's all the time I'm gonna put to these two questions. So I would say that, in my opinion, these are probably the best kind of DM questions because once you practice them a lot, it comes very, very straightforward what correct answers should look like. So let's have a look. The answer is D and D, so well done to people that put that. So we want the key point is always to look at what's in the actual question and see which one in the answers answer that the most. So let's look at this one. So should refuse collectors whose work involves reducing potential health hazards to the public lose the right to strike? So let's look at each one. So yes, when public servants like refuse collectors strike, it simply costs taxpayers more because councils must pay extra to hire private collectors to remove waste. And that could be a good answer if the question we're not asking about potential health hazards. So that's not related to that. Talking about refuse collectors, talking about public service, that's good, but it's not talking about the actual potential health hazards. So no, that was not a good answer. So yes, all strikes should be banned which threaten the health and well-being of citizens who have already paid for services which are being withheld. So once again, that's not really talking about refuse collectors. That's talking about all strikes which threatens. It's very vague in the first place because from that you could frame a lot of jobs from that perspective. It's not talking about prospective health. I was talking once again about the economical impact. Then once again, so no, refuse collecting is an unpleasant and sometimes dangerous job. As wages increase, it'll be difficult to recruit such sufficient refuse collectors. So once again, not related at all to strikes at all, really, not related to potential health hazards. So that's why C is not correct. Then D, no, all work including public servants. That includes refuse collectors. It's talking directly addressing them. That's what one of the pitfalls is not recognizing when synonyms or which ones are like actually being directly addressing the point or entitled to strike if their pay and conditions unsatisfactory. So once again, actually addressing the strikes and controlling hygiene threats are the employer's responsibility. So this one's also talking about health hazards. That's why it's addressing all the points of the question. So therefore, this is the best one. So next one, this one's a very tricky one, I would say. Even though that's you go, right? Does traveling solo in a foreign country give one more opportunity to disconnect from technology when traveling with companions? So these are the three main points you want to be keeping in your head. So yes, traveling solo puts one in complete control of the situation, eliminating the need to be in constant touch with travel. So we're not talking about disconnecting from technology really, and apart from the point of keeping in constant touch with travel, which is not really the only point of either of these two aspects. Yes, traveling solo gives one the freedom to choose what needs to be posted on social media instead of being forced to feature all the social media posts of travel companions. So this is not really, this is just talking about social media instead of actually disconnecting from technology, and also very not very good. Next one, no. One is forced to individually capture and document different cultural experiences to preserve the memory of the trip when there's no companion to also record them, which is a very big assumption. First of all, assuming that people have to do that and that the only way is through a companion. So that once this is very cliche, when an assumption is there, it's not a good answer. Then finally, the correct answer, no, the need to use technology helps one to help one find routes to follow, places to eat, and someone help requires much greater when there's no companion helping. So once again, this is talking about traveling solo in a foreign country. This is ticked off, disconnect from technology, ticked off, and traveling with companions. So you kind of want to have a checkbox in your head for all the key points and then see if which one ticks off the most boxes. In most cases, they should tick off all the boxes. So hopefully that makes sense. And then I think we'll leave these two. Then we'll do this one because it's very easy. And this should hopefully show you the kind of question you want to be triaging for. So I'll give you guys like a minute or so to have a go at this one. Yeah, that's probably all the time you would need for this. So you just want to look in, just look at the keywords terrace, two other features. So you probably highlight the terrace, go in and look at exactly two features. The other one people might put as W. But this is the kind of question I'm going to be triaging for, and they're very straightforward. The diagram ones, in my experience, usually the easier ones in DM because they've already done half the work for you. So these are the kind of questions I'm going to be triaging for. And then let's see what's the time, 55. I think we will skip past these. I think we'll come back to QR last. I think SJT is a lot more important. My tips for QR be you'll get a calculator, but it's only on screen, so make sure you're practicing with it now. You're using it as much as you can. Don't use a real calculator when you're doing your questions, because that will make you it'll kind of be a crutch because you won't have them in the actual exam. Practice using them and typing with the number pad. Not you can try to do the ones on top, but it's obviously a lot easier to do with the number pad. It takes a few weeks to get that to helping your typing skills. You want to also be, like I said before, trace the least amount as it can be slower than doing mental maths. Focus on the easier questions first and do not do the ones which may take too long. There's no different number of marks for harder questions. So even though you may feel like, oh, I'm so close to be able to finish the question, that's the sunk cost fallacy. You don't want to be wasting your time on those kind of questions, even if you are close to getting the answer. Anyway, so the most important one for being comfortable with swapping units, because a lot of the questions will rely on you swapping units. So you want to make sure you're identifying them in the question first, like hours, minutes, seconds. You know how very easy you have to swap between them. The main thing is practice. Make sure you're comfortable with the memory function, rather than only at the end unless instructed to otherwise. Use the on-screen calculator only if you need to. So we'll come back to this one. I think SGT is a lot more important, especially now that they've taken out another section. So a lot of people that I know didn't take SGT as seriously. It's a message I want to get across now because a lot of you will be coming to the point where you'll just be doing your mocks. I know a lot of people when they get to the end of the mock, they just had a very bad QR section. They just want to take it, just want to end it there, or they just use it as spare time to just relax at the end of their exam. But no, you really need to pay attention to SGT. I know someone that got in my year 3,280, but he got band three and he didn't have getting interviews from loads of his UCAT unis, even though he had like top 1% score because didn't have as good of a band. So the band is really important as well. So band three is not the end of the world, but it's also as important as the rest of it. You want to be really trying to get at least band two, ideally band one. So my advice for this would be to read good medical practice. If you've not read it yet, you really need to. You're not going to be able to learn everything just by doing questions. You could probably get a good gist, but just from doing questions, it's not really the best. This is produced by the GMC. Not too long will be the basis of many questions. You can use it to practice speed reading too. It could be a good. You can read it before bed, practice speed reading, make sure it stays in your head. If you can't sleep the night before, maybe read this to help put you to sleep. You just want to learn the ethical pillars of autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. This can also identify a lot of the correct answers. The general outline, this is a very important bit. So there's usually a situation as a problem which has been taken into consideration. And then what will determine which one is which category is how critical it is for you to solve the situation. So very important is vital to take into account immediately. Important is something that's important but not critical to the situation taken into account. minor importance is something that can be considered, but does not really matter to the situation, and not important or it's something that should be ignored, and more importantly, usually is not done. So it'll usually be not important, but usually be the thing that you should not do at all. It'll usually be very obvious when it's not important, and it's going to be like the wrong thing to do. It'll usually be if you think it's not important, it's usually be of minor importance compared to not important. If it's really even somewhat related, then it's gonna be minor important. But if it's very something clearly wrong, it's gonna be not important. So hopefully that will help you understand the distinction. So I don't want to spend too long on these. So I'm just gonna give around a minute per question because it's very important we understand SAT because I think it's become even more important with these new changes. So I'll give you guys around a minute to do these ones. Okay, I'm seeing a few answers in the chat now, so thank you to everyone that's submitted it. So these ones are from the actual UCAT site. A lot of people say don't use the official question banks that much because they're not very good. I would say that's completely true, apart from SJT. I would say for SJT, maybe do have a go at them because I'll give you like what they actually want to see. So do have a go at this because some of the reasons are very silly. But so the answer is A, C, A, A. So most of you got the three A's, and this one's the one that lots of people get wrong. So let's see the identification. We want to look at the key points. So a very easy thing to know is that if it affects patients at all, if it affects patients even in the slightest, it's going to be A. That's just the key to if it's ever going to affect a patient in a negative way, it's going to be very important. That's kind of the whole point of what we're trying to get across. So if you see something regarding patient safety, so it says here, so we conducting consultation with patients, and then it identifies to others that students are in fact so it's going to affect the patient's knowledge. So therefore, the answer is going to be A for this one because these all is related to patient safety. The second one, whether or not her fellow students are made aware of a situation. So this is where my distinction between C and D was very important. So it's not really the wrong thing to do, is it? It's not going to have a negative effect. And in fact, it may help and inform her peers in not making the same mistakes. And that is the reason that it may be of minor importance. Why is it not very important? Why is it not important? Because it's not directly affecting the actual situation, the actual problem of her having lost her thing. How is it? So that's not really since it's not really helping either it's not really affecting the fact that she doesn't have it or that she's lost it. That's the main problem there. It's not affecting, therefore it's going to be C because it's also not being incredibly negative. So I hope that will make sense now. You can apply that to other questions. Um, that her badge could be used by anyone else to access the hospital if the issues left unreported. So that's very clearly affecting patient safety. Very important. Anything to do with patients, I really want to get across. If it affects patient safety at all, it's going to be very important. You can see that in the next one that the patients whom she'll be interacting and are made aware that she's not yet qualified. So they have to know for legal reasons, for like quality of care, that she is a student and not an actual doctor. So that's why it's very important. So I think I'm gonna skip to the last bit in case people end up leaving. We'll come back to these questions in a second, but in case people end up they don't have enough time, so we'll just look at the general advice quickly and we'll go back to some of these questions. So general advice, like I said, guess, flag, and skip everything that takes too long. Do as many questions and mocks as you can. Think about how many mocks you have left that you want to complete and schedule them into how many weeks you need to have left. Make sure, even though you're still very late into your practice, still take those rest days. Those are very important. Keep practicing the memory function on the calculator will really help. So I would say this was probably incorrect 8 weeks. It's probably a bit longer now. But the other bit, there's nothing wrong with delaying if you're not feeling confident. How you feel is actually very important. Even on the day, if you're not feeling confident, that's the next slide, so don't worry. Um, even if there's nothing, if you feel literally at the center and you don't feel like you're feeling right, delay it. From my personal experience, I went with one of my three of my friends at the same time. One of my friends, he predicted a lot lower than he ended up getting. He ended up not, I think his passport was expired or invalidated or something like that, and that was his form of ID. So he couldn't sit the exam, and he ended up having to take an extra week. And obviously at the time he was upset, but the extra week ended up helping him a lot. Because I also know from before he didn't feel that confident. So if you're not feeling confident, even if it's on the day, delay it because it's really important to delay it if you're not feeling like it. And once again, practice. You only have a few weeks left. It's almost over. Just try and put as much effort as you can so you can say that you've really tried your best for your exam this year. So advice for on the day before, don't focus too much on timing. So you've put on all this hard work. You guys have really clearly put in a lot of effort into your UCAT. So don't focus too much on the timing before like the actual thing. That can be risky for your confidence. You want to make sure that you're feeling very confident because you guys have put in a lot of work. You all worked very hard, I'm sure. So you want to be going in with that mindset that you have the ability to do very well. You want to prioritize your sleep and make sure you're ready for the potentially noisy exam environment. I know a lot of people from personal experience to get mad at their family for being too loud when they're trying to practice. But in reality, you're going to possibly doing it like a driving test and somewhere like that. So you want to make sure you're used to that environment or anything like that. If I click reschedule on the UCAT website, do I have to cancel my current date before rescheduling? So I can't just I'm gonna be honest, I don't really know. I think you should email them and find out because I myself didn't reschedule. Um I think maybe if you make a new account. I don't know if that's allowed, but maybe if you don't have to pay, but I don't know if you can check then. Are the headphones and was it quite noisy in your test? So I didn't have, I think some centers do. I'm pretty sure mine didn't. And I don't really remember from you. I don't think mine did. I know of my friends that did have headphones in their place. They said they weren't very good. And it was like a little bit noisy. It's like by a road, you can hear cars. It's not going to be pitch silent. So I would say be prepared for that. There's like sections, I don't know, in the actual exam where it's going to give you time to read the instructions. That's almost the best time to just take. You always want to be using that time to take a breath and think to yourself, okay, this is QR. These are the things I need to remember. I need to make sure, like, you just want to make sure you use that time when you get to read the instructions because the time they'll give you like a minute and 30 to read, like, the next section is VR, blah, 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 blah. And some people will skip ahead and just try to get straight into it. But I personally think you're going to take a deep breath, especially if you had a very bad section before. And yeah, just try and maintain like your calmness because you put in a lot of effort, a lot of work. You need to keep reminding yourself of that and going with a good mindset. Maintain your rest days throughout practice, like I've been saying, to avoid burnout. You want to still be taking rest, even maybe like a week before. You, like I said, use the time before your test to relax and prepare your headspace. And the main thing is flag guessing and skipping, so you can move on even if something goes wrong. For one of my mocks, the Medify calculator stopped working. If this happens in the actual exam, what would happen? I don't think that happens. I've not heard of that happening in the actual exam, but I think I actually don't know. I've not really heard of that happening in the actual exam because they don't use the same platform as Medify. It's different. It's like I'm like 90% sure it'll work, and if it doesn't work, I think you can definitely flag it, and there'll definitely be some sort of adjustment. You have to email them or get the attention. But I think the actual paper, it wouldn't. There's not really much they can do, and they're not really like benevolent. So it's like 99.999% chance that wouldn't even happen in the first place. So I wouldn't really worry about it too much because they don't use Medify. My calculator didn't want to just look at the actual icon works. So yeah, maybe that's something to keep in mind. Um, but it shouldn't happen. So don't worry too much about it. That's gonna be not to be scary, but that's gonna be the least of your worries on the day. Anyways, the main point is to be prepared to flag, guess, and skip, so you can move on even if something goes wrong. And if you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll go back and we can do some SJT questions for a few minutes. All right. So if you guys have any questions while we do these questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a go at these ones because you might not. There's also different types of SJT questions which are important to know the method for. So this is a different type. The appropriate the how important to take into account the following considerations in a group setting. So I'll give you guys a minute or so to have a go at these. Okay, how do you recommend working on improving inference questions, syllogisms, and logic puzzles in decision making? So, I think I've said already, but the main thing is just using as many visual aids as possible. So in just literally like uh, there's not much you can do apart from practicing and then also drawing out those flow diagrams and then your Venn diagrams. Maybe um I don't have much time, but I'd say maybe watch some YouTube videos on certain YouTubers. I forgot the guy's name. They do mock run throughs and they'll give the decision the process behind the answers. So maybe search up decision making mock on YouTube. I think his name is Eddie something and Eddie Emil, something like that. And maybe try the question yourself. Think about your own thought process in answering that question. Watch the video and see how he does it, and then see how you need to improve your own thought process. So hopefully that makes sense. So let's have a look at this next one. So the answer would be worth doing Medify mini mocks, or should I still stick to the full mock? So um I don't know how many weeks you have left. If there's more than two, I would say the time when you switch to full mocks, you should still be doing mocks now. 4 weeks, yeah. Yeah, still do your mini mocks. Until the cutoff I would say for mini mocks, probably around 2 weeks before. You should still be doing mocks before that. In fact, you probably want to try to do as many mini mocks as you can before. Because there's probably less mini mocks than actual mocks. I think I don't remember. But they're still good, especially for working on your weaker sections. So I say for your weaker section, do as many mini mocks as you can. Okay, so let's see. Jeremy's existing relationship with Margot. So once again, so let's see. Yeah, see, that's good. So it's not important at all, and it may affect it negatively. So it's of minor importance. So we need to think about what is the main issue here. The main issue is them interrupting the lecturer and asking irrelevant questions. So therefore, it's therefore going to affect the lecture, and therefore, because I think it doesn't necessarily this is a medical school or whatever, but it's going to be affecting students' learning. That's the main issue here. So let's see the impact that the student's behavior is having on the emotional state of the lecturer. So the main issue here is actually you think about is the actual what's the main issue is the effect on the actual lesson itself. So the lecturer getting frustrated is obviously not very nice. But the actual issue is how it's affecting. So on one of the other students at the class lecture, Jeremy, is finding it difficult to concentrate. The interruptions are affecting his ability to learn. So the main thing is the ability to learn is being affected. So that's when thing about affecting lessons in the students. So the teachers being flustered is only really an issue because it means that the lesson is now being interrupted and the students aren't learning as well. So the lecture himself is important, obviously, but in the context of the question, the main thing is that some students are attending a class lecture. It's the issue is about fixing the lesson being interrupted. So yeah, so this is the main problem here, stated very clear. The impact the situation is having on the opportunity for everyone to learn. That's the main issue here. And then B, whether the lecturer is able to deal with the situation himself. So this is important because obviously it's up to him to do that. But then the main issue should be Margot stopping herself. So hopefully that makes sense. So I think this will be the last one. Let me see what we have. So okay, we've got like two more. So have a go at this one now as well. Okay, let's have a look at this one. So the answer was DABB. I'm seeing one or two of you got that correct. Most of you guys seem to be having issue with the third one. So we'll look at that. So what's the main issue here? The main issue is that, once again, it's to do with patient safety. So the main issue is the patient has what they've said and how they're feeling. So it's all about patient the consultant frequently swears loudly on the ward, which makes them feel uncomfortable. So the main thing is the patient being comfortable. So the first one is the consultant marking one of his assessments. So that's gonna have to be a wrong thing to think about. This is one of the cases which is very clearly gonna be D. There's a very clear overriding consideration. The main thing is the patient's comfortability. So I think it's like you thinking of yourself in the situation is not the right thing to think of at all. So you want to be kind of like, if you take that into importance, kind of like you'd be letting that doctor off for being rude because you want him to like you for your assessment. Because in theory, the doctor should be fair in his assessment, no matter what you've said, like no matter how you address the situation, because it's a patient concern. Therefore, it's going to be D. The next one is a patient on the ward has told him that he feels so uncomfortable that he wants to leave. That's very important. So once again, if you see anything regarding patient's comfort, their safety, it's going to be an A. Very straightforward. The next one, other patients may have overheard the consultant swearing loudly on the ward and also feel uncomfortable. So I see why some people would say it's very important, but once again, the very key difference here that this is has and this says may. So this one's in theory, so it's important because it's to do with patient safety, but it's like a lot more theoretical. It's not key to the actual situation here because it's still a possibility. It's not something that has happened or is because we don't know for sure that this is real as well. And that's why the nurse has not witnessed the consultant swearing loud in the word. It's important because obviously the nurse's opinion does matter, but in this case, the main critical thing is the patient feeling uncomfortable. So it is important because the nurse could be right, but the main thing is going to be how the patient feels. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so hopefully that one makes sense. So let's see. I think this is the last one. So we'll have a go at this one and then call it a day. Do you still get partial marks in SGAT? So if I answer A, yeah, I think you do. You do get partial marks. If it's like strongly agree and you put agree, it wouldn't be correct, but I think it'd be like half a mark. Okay, so this could be the answers for this one. So the answers were A, C, D, A. This was a tricky one. That's why I picked it. So let's see. So the one of them's passed not passed all their exams and they're struggling because they worked really hard and they're thinking that if they do it again it's gonna fail. So they're clearly feeling very low. So have you thought about seeking support from the university on what to do? This is very sensitive. It's the most professional answer. That's what the GMC would want you to say. So it's important to read it. So it's very sensitive and they're not really giving too many like there's nothing wrong with this at all. And yes, the most professional, therefore it's gonna be A. I'm sure you will find it easier to pass the exam next time. So this is not helpful. So and it's not supportive because the person's clearly not not thinking at all that they'll be able to. So you're not really helping them at all. So you're not there's not it's gonna be inappropriate. but it is helpful because it's not awful because of the intentions. So hopefully that makes sense why it's C, because you're not really try actually helping them. Because the actual issue here is that the person needs support. That's the issue. They need support. You're not actually supporting them or giving them practical solution or actual way of what they should do. They're kind of asking for some advice almost. That's what they want you to do. They want to give some advice. And so this is not helpful advice at all. And it's not very, like you can see from the mental state, that's not really what they need to hear because they clearly don't think that at all. But the intention is there, so that's why it's C. It's not awful. And then this one is a very clear example of D, I would have thought, but I don't think anyone else agrees. So maybe you could apply for a different course, perhaps an easier one. So literally telling them to quit. So that could be quite demeaning and patronizing because you're like almost saying that you can't do this, you don't have the potential to do this. So that's why this one would be D. And then the last one, A, I think you should take some time to think about what you want to do before making any decision. So it's very clear that this guy's in like a bad state, bad mental state. He's just found out he's failed. So think about the context of the situation. But him taking some time is also another very good practical solution. So this one's not practice giving a solution at all. That's why this one is C and not B or A. And this one actually is giving a solution somewhat and being supportive and practical. So that's why this one is A. So I think that's all the time we have for today. We have gone a bit over, but I hope this has been helpful to you guys. Do you know if Medify or MedEntry is more accurate? In terms of scoring, like it's very variable because the actual questions you get in the test can be very different and they vary from year to year. That's my disclaimer. But my personal story is that I actually didn't listen to my own advice I really regret it, but I did a med entry exam mock on the day before, and I ended up getting the exact same score on med entry that I did on the actual exam. So I did find med entry to be a bit more difficult, but I think Medify everyone says is a bit more difficult. That's probably more useful. For the SJT scores I get on both is very different. Um, I don't know about the SJT to be honest that much. I always found them personally quite similar. So it could just be bad luck, but it shouldn't vary too much in the real. I think in the real thing, I think med entry might be more similar, but that's why I say try the actual question bank from SJT. So I'm gonna leave it there unless she has any more questions. Phil, I just gave my tips because I didn't go through any questions because there's not much actual theory or technique there apart from skipping the longer ones and just practice, practice, practice. QR's on that should be taking a lot of practice because once you get the question types, it's almost the most easy one. And QR is definitely the most important one to triage too. That's the other thing I would say. So unless you guys have any more questions, I think I'm gonna end it there. Like I'm glad you found it helpful. How do you spot questions of triage in QR? So let's look at the ones that I would have gone through if you had a bit more time. Or I didn't go too quick. So these ones where it's very simple calculation, you've been given. You should be thinking about what calculations do I need to do for this. So this one, some of these are very straightforward. Some of these are a lot longer, but they're still straightforward. The one like this one here, we have to like apply different formulas. It's got long, long text. That's very clearly not going to be this one. But this one, he can see just from looking at it, all the stuff's in the question. Very simple, like one line, one or two lines of working. So you can just see how many different like variables are there in the question that could be important. So each one of these up here is a variable they might think about, and how many things they're asking you to do in the question. If they're asking you to do not many things, then it's probably be more straightforward, and you want to do it. But they're asking you like in some of these where it's like asking you like three things, then it's going to be for a keyword. Do you do a keyword such as retain the passage? So it depends on the question type. So if it was like asking you to summarize, if it's asking you to kind of if it's this kind of question, physics guards were established between, you'd probably want to do a keyword search. If it's asking you for like which does the passage, according to the passage, which is the best which statement is the passage support the most, if you don't have much time, then I would say you want to try to retain it. So it depends on that. It's very variable, I would say. I would say keyword search is the best, usually. But for depending on the question type and the actual passage type, like if it's a really long passage, realistically you're not able to retain it. Keyword search is obviously gonna be it. So it depends on the actual passage. So any last questions? All right, no worries. And I think That's everything from me. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope you guys found it helpful.
Thanks, Anish, for doing today's session. Just again, just as a reminder, we will be starting our 3 week UCAT mock exam as of next Sunday. So if you're interested in that, in attending that and joining it, it has been posted in all the groups, and the link to the Eventbrite is underneath the flyer. So other than that, I hope everyone has a lovely rest of the day, and we'll see if you're joining the mock, we'll see you all then. But have a lovely evening, everyone.